So welcome everyone on behalf of the Authors Guild Foundation. My name's Johnny, and we have with us today Maika Mulit and Maritza Mulit, co-authors of One of the Good Ones. This was the second YA novel written by the sisters after Dear Haiti, Love Elaine. Now, From Manuscript to Marketplace offers behind-the-scenes looks at a variety of books. Last month, we had the debut memoir from travel writer Cheney Kwok with his editor. And earlier this week, we had the novel The City of Good Death with Priyanka Champaneri and her agent and editor. And we've never featured co-authors in this series before, so I think we're all interested to hear about the foibles of that aspect in writing, editing, marketing, and everything else. I should just say that this series is funded in part by the New York State Council on the Arts with the support of Governor Kathy Hochul and the New York State Legislature. Thank you to all supporters of the Authors Guild Foundation, which lets us put on these educational programs for Authors Guild members and non-members, any writers who are interested. And now, a round of virtual applause for our featured authors. Maika Mulit, Miami native, daughter of Haitian immigrants. She loves writing books, think pieces, journal entries, never-ending lists, random thoughts in her notes app, you name it. She's currently a Howard University PhD student. And Maritza Mulit graduated from University of Southern California with a master's in journalism, but her favorite job has been a Head Start literacy tutor. She loved it so much working with kids that she's now a PhD student at the University of Pennsylvania. And she's exploring ways to improve literacy through children's media. That all sounds wonderful. So everyone, thank you for being here. Please feel free to use the Q&A box below to submit questions for our panelists. They'll have a bit of a presentation and we'll have Q&A toward the end. And with that, let's get started. I'll turn it over to you, Maika and Maritza.
Hi, thank you, Johnny. Hello, hi everyone. We're so excited. And yay for participants. We were like, okay, we're sending the links to our family members so that way it's not nobody. Exactly. Just to make sure. But yes, thank you everyone for joining us. Like Johnny said, Maritza and I have a quick presentation that we will walk y'all through, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So let's hope that technology is on my side. Oops. Here we go. Oh, wait, it's like share your computer. And I'm like, what's my computer password? Okay. So everyone should be able to see the presentation right now. So I will, let's see if it will let me do this.
Cool. It looks like we just see the presentation.
Awesome. All right, let's get this show on the road.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maritza Mulit. This is Maika. We literally just said it. And we are going to be talking about that really fun transition from the manuscript to the marketplace, specifically what it's like selling your second book after that first book and all the pressure that comes with that.
So for a quick agenda, we will be going over who we are, even though, we love introducing ourselves 11 million times, as you can see. We'll talk a little bit about our books, Dear Haiti, Love Elaine, One of the Good Ones, and our upcoming novel, The Summer I Ate the Rich. And then we'll get into the meat and potatoes about what we're here for today, the part where we go from manuscript to marketplace. And then again, we'll open it up for any questions. So if that sounds good to everybody, we'll go ahead and get started.
So first, we are sisters, not sisters, although we are sisters, but a lot of times people will just not assume that we are actual siblings, but we are the two oldest of 4 women and we're obsessed with them and talk about them all the time. So there you go. Maika is
I'm a Sagittarius, which means I can be very blunt and I love to travel.
I'm a Libra, which means that I am wildly indecisive and love expensive, beautiful things. We have gone to many schools. Right now I'm at Penn, getting my PhD in education, reading, writing, and literacy. I'm really interested in exploring how diversity influences young children's perceptions of themselves through children's media and the way they see the world, which is really relevant to the work that we do as authors.
Yes, and I am currently at Howard University in the Communications, Culture, and Media Studies department, where I'm really interested in representation in media, how Haitian people are represented throughout the media, as well as what we like to affectionately call diaspora wars between the Black diaspora.
Oh, and our nemesis, number one, are people who do not use their turn signals. We are from Miami and it's the norm. It shouldn't be. I'll leave it at that.
So a little bit about our books. So we have had the honor, the pleasure of writing multiple books now. It feels so amazing for us to be able to say that. We kind of joked when we got our second book deal, like, we get to continue scamming. They're letting us do this again. So our first book is called Dear Haiti, Love Elaine, and it's about a 17-year-old Haitian American named Elaine Beaupalin who gets sent to Haiti after a prank goes terribly wrong. And then while she's there, she learns more about this curse that her family has had for many generations. And she sets out on trying to break it because it might be behind the very public outburst that her mother had on the air, because her mother is a very high profile journalist. So she goes and she rekindles this relationship with her mother, learns about her history, and of course, there's a little bit of magic interspersed in there as well.
We can't help ourselves. Our second novel is one of the good ones. It's also young adult, and it's about 17, just turned 18-year-old Kezzy Smith, who dies under very mysterious circumstances in police custody after attending a social justice rally. So to commemorate their history buff sister's life, Happy and Jenny Smith decide to embark on a journey using Kezzy's heirloom copy of the Negro Motorist Green Book. And we are definitely biased. We say that a lot, but we feel like one of the good ones will leave you shook and wondering what it means to be an ally.
Yes, and then our upcoming book, The Summer I Ate the Rich, is about 17-year-old Haitian American zombie Brielle Petitfou, and she essentially wants to seek revenge on the very wealthy elite that she blames for her family's pain. And we started writing this book during this period of being in a pandemic, and seeing billionaires being able to blast off almost into space has been really great inspiration for this story.
Lika likes to add the almost part.
They didn't make it one
time. So this presentation is about this here blue arrow, that option between book 1 and book 2. And we're going to into the differences of writing that first book to the second book, and any tips or tricks that you can use when you're at that stage as well. But first, where it all began.
Yes, so our story for our second book, our option book, which we now know as one of the good ones, was originally called the Negro Motorist Green. It was called our Green Book because it incorporated the Negro Motorist Green Book. And we're very terrible with titles, which we'll get into a little bit later. But we knew that our idea for this story would be told from the perspective of someone in that time, and it's flashing back between her descendants on a road trip and the current and the person in the past. So when we originally thought of this idea, we were kind of thinking about it from the family members who are older or who in the modern day wouldn't be here anymore. But as we were going through the revision process and we were thinking, and we knew that we wanted this story to be for a young adult audience, we decided that we wanted to focus on our characters today and then flash back to different moments in the past.
Yes, and we actually had this idea for the what became one of the good ones before Dear Haiti, Love Elaine, our first book, had even been published yet. We were probably still in the throes of editing it. So even then, we knew that the tone of this book would be very different from Dear Haiti, Love Elaine. And one of our author mentors is Evie Zaboy, a fellow Haitian American author. And we talk about this a lot because it really has stayed with us. And she casually mentioned it one time, but she talked about writing inhale books and exhale books. And exhale books are just an easy, smooth rush of fresh air. It's easy to come out. It's very enjoyable. But inhale books take energy and they require you to kind of push against what's comfortable for you. And it holds that pressure like you're breathing, like you're inhaling. So Dear Haiti, Love Elaine, we started out on an exhale. And one of the good ones certainly was a big inhale book for us. But nevertheless, despite the difference in tones of the stories, this book definitely felt like the one that we needed to write next. So we went with it.
So we have a few tips for you in terms of when you're moving from that initial book, when you're out at what you call the Wild West, right? You maybe don't have an agent yet, you don't have a publishing house, you're just kind of drifting and hoping for that dream of one day being published. And then you've acquired that, and then now you are moving on to the next phase where you are contractually obligated to provide the next book, right? And it can be very nerve-wracking. So our first tip would be to be organized. It's so interesting. Like after when we were writing Dear Haiti, Love Elaine, and we were going through that process, there's so much information about before you ever have a book published, but there's so little information about when you move from first book to option book. And at least in the places that we looked, we couldn't find them. So it's very opaque when you're publishing that the second book and you're trying to figure it out. And we decided that we wanted to just kind of feel it out ourselves. There were so many things that we didn't know. So it didn't make sense for us to get really, frozen with the things that we didn't know. So instead, we decided that we were going to be organized. So Maritza and I, because we work together, we have to know what the other person is working on. And so we have a very organized, if you couldn't tell, way that we keep our emails together. Our folders are labeled with different story ideas, and we just keep injecting them as we go along. So no matter what, as you're working between your first and your second book, if you have any ideas that pop up, just email them to yourself and label them. So we have like a YA folder, middle grade, adult, things we want to write for maybe television or film one day, anything that pops to our mind, we put it into this folder. And then that way, when you get to the point that you've moved from book one to your next book, it's less of a stretch for you to be able to know what you're thinking about because you already have so many ideas already percolating.
Our next tip our next tip is don't be afraid to do a little more if you think it'll help you get your point across better. So for example, we didn't need to write an author letter for One of the Good Ones, but we were still very compelled to do so because we wanted to make sure that we were giving clarity as to our inspiration for the story and why we wanted to write it and why this book was very important, especially a book that is of such a sensitive topic. Also, we definitely believe that success is, an accumulation of different factors and variables that go your way, essentially. So if you have the ability to kind of throw more things in your favor, why not try to do that?
Yes. And then also when you're writing your 3 chapters, if you write the 3 chapters for your option, you want to make those characters pop, right? Not just pop, it has to be P-O-P. Like you have to be very intentional. Leave it all on the floor. Don't assume that the publisher will get the idea. Maritza and I are very type A, so we send, a pretty extensive outline. We send the first 3 chapters, and then we also send our author notes because it was really important for us to get into the inspiration for the idea. Now, some people don't do all of that, but again, Maritza and I are extra, so that's what we do. It helps us feel like we have a better grasp of the story. And also, you'll find that people are always asking you, what are you writing next? And you have to know how to succinctly summarize that. So our way of getting prepared is by being over-prepared.
Yeah, I always feel bad asking someone like, oh, what do you have going on? Because I hate when people ask me that, but there I go asking. Okay, so next up is do what feels best for you, but sometimes more is more with outlining. Back in the day, Maika would have been called something like what would you say it was, Maika?
A pantser. I write by the seat of my pants.
Pantser. She wrote by the seat of her pants, and I was a plotter. The good type of writer. I'm just kidding. But in order for us to write together efficiently, effectively, we both kind of had to adopt the plotter mindset because even though we are super close and have very similar sensibilities, we're not, 100% sharing a mind all the time. So it's helpful to have all of that down. So even though we do these extensive outlines, so we have a better understanding between the both of us what we're going to do in the story, it still is a really great practice if that's the type of writing style that you have. Oh, and then also we came across this meme, and that's kind of like what selling your book on option feels like to us.
Yeah.
I don't know where it came from, but you spend so much time crafting that beautiful beginning. Those 3 chapters are just like, oh my God, you know every single thing that is like, you could read it, you can imagine what's going on there. Like it's so clear. And then if you look a little bit closer at the outline or what comes next, and it's like 100% a stick figure. So really, for an option, you really want to make sure that those early chapters are so amazing that they distract your publisher from the stick figures while you figure the rest of it out.
Yeah, they're so enamored by the wonderful aesthetics in the beginning that they're fine with the just vibes that are happening for the rest of the story.
Yeah, if they could do that to the back legs, imagine the front legs.
Exactly. Yes. So our, this this slide here is basically what we were thinking about for the manuscript. Sorry, it's getting a little dark right now, but this is where we're thinking about for the manuscript. We have a short excerpt here, but we knew very early on what we wanted these initial pages to say. And so this hasn't really changed much from the final version that you all see in terms of how the book started. So we knew that we wanted to start it off with Happy. And if you don't know what One of the Good Ones is about, which we kind of talked about briefly, but just to reiterate, it's about Kezzie Smith, a 17 turned 18-year-old social justice activist who ends up dying under mysterious circumstances while in police custody. And her sisters, Happy and Jenny, go on this journey using the Negro Motorist Green Book as their guide because Kezzie was a history buff and she had planned this, elaborate road trip before, her death. And so we started it off with Happy because Happy is very angsty. Her voice is very clear, very sharp. She's dealing with, a lot of grief, but it's happening in the public eye, which is what a lot of people don't consider when you have families who go through very public tragedies. And so it was important for us to ground Happy as the initial voice because we would say her and Kezzie, and we hop between a few other voices, are the main characters. And it really, we hope, pulled the reader in right from the beginning.
And it worked because guess what? They wanted to buy the book. Yay. And this was the PW rights report announcement. And as you can see there, it was as yet untitled YA novel because, again, very bad with titles.
Yes, it was our Green book for the longest time because we couldn't think of a name. Our labels still say Green book.
Yup. All right, so you sold your book option. Amazing, wonderful. Now what? Okay, we have mentioned it once and we will mention it again while also acknowledging that it's hard to do this, but be organized and write it. Be accountable. So we have found that being on contract helps in that regard. In your first book, you're writing, you're hoping to sell it probably, and you just want one day for an agent to love what you've written and then go out on submission and then an editor buys it and there's a huge auction and oh my God, everything is crazy and the world has changed. But for the second book, you are contractually obligated to write the story now if the publisher has bought it and you probably haven't written it fully yet. So this is the time for you to just kind of dig in and get to work because now there's papers involved, lots of different types of papers.
Nothing like a contract to keep you on task. But then also, while you are working on your option book, Mert and I do not subscribe to the idea of having to write every day to be a writer. Like if you write and you finish the project, you're a writer. Like as soon, and even if you don't finish the project, right? So, and many people honestly don't have the privilege to be able to work every day. And sometimes you don't have the desire to do that anyway. Like there are definitely times where you need life experiences, different things happening in the world. So that way you can be inspired and you'll find that whenever you have, just a little bit of a roadblock or something that's stopping you from a writer's block, rather, when you're getting a little bit stuck on the story and you can't figure out where to go, the best tip is to step away from the project and do other things. And then it's percolating in the back of your mind and you'll find that you'll figure out what needs to happen next. So you've already sold the book on option. You did the work, you have more work to come, but know that you don't have to write every day and you can, change it however you need to, and just do what makes sense for you, and just try to adhere to those deadlines. And tip, if there happens to be a deadline that you don't make or you won't make, just let people know in advance. Things happen. It's okay.
So something that is exciting that's happening while you're writing, or stressful depending on where you are in the writing process, is that there starts to be all these other conversations that are happening while you're working. And one of the most exciting is talk about the cover. What is this book going to look like? And, you know, it says don't judge, or we all say don't judge a book by its cover, while totally judging books by their covers. So it's such a vital part of the publishing process. And we are very particular, we'll say, about what we wanted in a cover. We know that you don't always get what you want, but we have been lucky enough to really be listened to and heard when we talk about what we are envisioning for what this book would look like. We're sending emails about like the skin tones of the sisters. That's something that's important to us, because a lot of times like Black people all get the one shade of brown. And I mean,
the Family Guy shade of brown.
Yeah. And even with us, like the four of us, like we're all different shades of Black, and it's fun and cool. So we wanted to tap into that in the cover. We also sent them what we were envisioning about their different hairstyles. Kezi, we wanted her to have a fro. Happy would have some type of pressed or relaxed situation, because she is not relaxed, as they would say. And Jenny, she would have like box braids or twists. And the cover design and art direction was led by Gigi Lau, who is amazing, just amazing. And the artist who put it together was Rochelle Baker, who has been able to make the covers of other really great books as well. So we were just really thrilled with how this turned out.
Yes. And when Maritza says the four of us are different shades, she means us and our two younger sisters, Jessica and Lydianne, just in case you were wondering. So we told y'all we were terrible at titles. So we have presented the horrendous titles that we came up with while we were trying to settle on the title for one of the good ones. So first we have the Negro Motorist Road Trip. Yeah, it's terrible. The Road to Happy. I don't know what we were thinking when we came up with these. It was a fever dream. An American road trip, and we were trying to go for An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. And I mean, it's on the nose, to say the least.
I mean, yeah.
And then we have a few more here that you can see. I think, you know, it's just so funny how we went through these. It was so hard for us to come up with the title. And it's funny because in these two books, Dear Haiti, Love Elaine, and One of the Good Ones, we actually didn't come up with them. It was, they were people on our publishing team who really had like, you know, a stroke of genius to be able to get that. I love telling the story for Dear Haiti, Love Elaine, our first book. It was called This Just In because Elaine was a journalist after her mother, and we just couldn't think of a name. And she was the assistant for our editor at the time, and her name is Gabby. And Gabby said she basically had a dream, emailed herself in the middle of the night, and the only thing the email said was Dear Haiti, Love Elaine. And I was like, oh, the Haitian ancestors have spoken to you, because if there's one thing Haitian people love, it's a good dream. Like, oh, that was really great. But it was perfectly able to encapsulate the book, because Dear Haiti, Love Elaine is an epistolary novel told through like letters and text messages and all these different things. So the title of Dear Haiti, Love Elaine really married the two. And One of the Good Ones came because we had included that refrain throughout the text a few times. And then our editor at the time, Natasha Wilson, saw it and she was like, I think we should pull this out. And, you know, remember when you're going with titles, it's not just you who has to love it. It's your publishing team. They'll talk a little bit with the sales team as well, so that they can get ideas about that. When people say One of the Good Ones, it can and typically tends to be not the best. When people say that, it's like, oh, you're one of the good Blacks, but the others. So we wanted to have this title because we know the connotation, and we wanted to just twist it on its head or turn it on its head, however the American phrase goes. I always get these wrong, but that was really important for us. So yeah.
Thank you. We can go more in depth on these topics if you're interested later on, but one of the good ones, like Maika said, was us really pointing out the fact that many of us stop and question before we allow ourselves to be sad when a Black person dies at the hand of police, for example, and say like, oh, well, what were they doing? What did they do wrong? What type of school did they go to? How did they speak? What were their degrees? What was their job? Like, you end up having all of these questions in order to decide if this person is worthy of being missed, just regardless of, you know, them just being a human being. One of the good ones talks or touches upon a few different themes very strongly: social justice, in terms of what we are doing in the modern day, and the young people leading that charge, as well as how far we've come and where we need to continue to go. Sisterhood, as we've mentioned a few times, we're sisters and sisters. And also allyship, and you know, just making sure that even as you are marginalized, you aren't marginalizing other people for their respective identities as well.
Yes. So we did a lot of research for one of the good ones. And one of the things that, or places that we relied on, was the library. We are library girls. Shout out to the libraries. They are beacons of progress and change and ideas and thought. And we really leaned heavily on the New York Public Library Schomburg Center. They have this really wonderful, and first of all, before we get into that, they have digital copies of the Negro Motorist Green Books throughout time. So you'll see these different versions here in this screenshot. And it's a really great way for you to kind of leaf through and see what they are. So if you don't know what the Negro Motorist Green Book is, it was this book that people needed, and essentially Black folks and other marginalized people use it as well, to be able to safely travel across the United States during segregation. And it showed places where you can sleep, where you can get gas, places to eat, all of these different things in between. And a little bit of the information that we found throughout these texts was incorporated within the book. The Schomburg Center also has this really cool and interactive layout that allows you to track your trip. So basically you can choose, you know, the Negro Motorist Green Book from, let's say, 1951, and you put in your starting point and your destination, and they'll plot the route for you. And you might find that the route that it's making you take is a bit more roundabout than you would normally take. And the reason why is because they were trying to avoid you going to places where you might be in danger or your life can be at risk. So when you see it listed out and visually, it really drives home the fact that this was the reality in the United States. And it was important for us to highlight as well that, you know, a lot of times we'll talk about these things and people think, oh, this only happened in the South. But no, it happened throughout the country. And using the New York Public Library Schomburg Center interactive map allows you to see that.
So while this is going on, we finally get through all the research, finish this book. Finally, there are all these really fun book cover edits and variations that are coming through. We figure out a title, marketing and publicity are doing their thing. We finally get an ARC, which was exciting for us because getting those physical copies wasn't necessarily a given, especially during the pandemic. But when you get that advanced reader copy, it's like, oh, things are definitely becoming more real.
Yes. There's no going back now. And also, just a quick shout out to Kezi, Happy, and Jenny's hair on this cover. I'm like, the texture, the kinks, the coils, like, I will never get tired of this cover.
Amazing.
So, yes.
Oh, thanks. And then January 5th comes. And so for Dear Haiti, Love Elaine, we had the opportunity to travel to many cities and schools, talk to really amazing students and readers to discuss the book. But as we all know, the pandemic prevented that from happening this time around. So Laura Giannino and Justine Shaw are publicity powerhouses who set up virtual tours that made sense for us. And something that they made clear, which was definitely helpful, is that more isn't necessarily more. Like, it would be, you know, sometimes more efficient, helpful to zero in on markets that are the most supportive and make the most sense. So our first event was a virtual, these were all virtual events. And the first one was at Books and Books, which is our local indie bookstore where you could get signed copies of our books in Miami, Florida.
Nice plug. And
Oh,
they deliver throughout the country.
check out Bookshelf. No, okay, but yeah, and it's our hometown of Miami, and we did the event with Brad Meltzer, who went to our high school and is a mentor and is so supportive, and we are obsessed with him.
Yes. And then our next event was at Books Are Magic, again virtually, and it was with Ibi Zaboy and Vladimir Duthier, who are both Haitian and in media. And it's so ridiculous to us that we get the opportunity to be able to like email people like this and be like, "Hey, hi, it's just us again. Would you please?"
Will you talk to us?
And they agreed. But Vladimir, we were like, you are you gonna be on the air? Like there were a lot of things happening during the time. So, but he was like, nope, I'll be there. So really great.
And then our next event was at Loyalty Books, which is an amazing bookstore in the DMV where Maika is located now. And we were in conversation with Alyssa Cole. Now, to tell you that we are huge fans of her would be an enormous understatement. We
auto-buy author, like automatically.
Yes. And we were absolutely thrilled when she said that she would be in conversation with us. And she is largely known for her romance writing, but she also writes thrillers. And her book, When No One Is Watching, had recently come out. And one of the good ones is a thriller that sometimes surprises people. But so it made sense to do the event. Honestly, even if it didn't make sense, we would have done it because, I mean,
we love her. And then finally, this was a little bit later on, which is something that you should consider as well, that everything doesn't have to happen within the week of your book being published. You want continued publicity, which is awesome. It keeps the buzz going. And so we had a later event with Barnes & Noble, and it was with a few other authors, with the incomparable Renee Watson, Frederick Joseph, and Namina Forna as well. And it was really great for us to be able to do an event with Barnes & Noble, because when we were growing up, Books and Books was way down south and we were way up north. So we had a Barnes & Noble that we would go to all the time. So it was a good hearkening to our past.
Now, we have come a long way from the early beginnings of online events. So there should hopefully not be as many kinks to iron out, but make sure that there are protections in place so that everyone feels safe and people can't basically log on and wild out. So like just have those things in mind and protections in place when we're doing these events.
Yes. And yes, and these are some examples of, some of the publicity that we were able to get. Maritza and I are, we were like perpetual students, as you can tell by our very extensive bios. And so we really tapped into all of our different networks. And it's so important for you to do that. You don't always think of that. So since Maritza and I have gone to so many schools, we reached out to all the schools that we've gone to, including high school, to say, hey, we went here, just wanted you to know, can we do an event with y'all? Or, just honestly, we were like, what do you call those?
You want to talk to us?
Yeah, those salesmen that have the big jackets and like open, like I got watches. That was us. And also Brad and our dad. Like they were like competing with how many people they could get us in front of. So it's really important to use your networks. We also were trying to do things on social media as well. Maritza talked me into doing this spoof of, what's the movie again?
Love Actually.
Love Actually, which you can find our social pages if you go down far enough.
All right. Yeah.
Wait, did you want me to play it? No, right? We don't have to do that. No, I don't think we should. You can. We're gonna keep it moving. But yes. Oh, also, we forgot to say the really cool thing. We were on Late Night with Seth Meyers, which was totally just really wonderful for us. Like we would have loved to be there in person, but we were able to do it virtually. And like we're very navel gazy. So I've rewatched this video a ton of times because I was just so excited. And I'm just like, oh my God, look at how clever we were. So that was lots of fun for us.
Also, something that is important is that when you get all of these really amazing opportunities, be ready for them, regardless of if you are doing a story in your local newspaper, in a high school radio show, if you're on a national radio or TV talk show or whatever it is, like just have your talking points ready. You're coming on there. They're expecting you to discuss your book, be able to do it succinctly in a way that I'm not doing it right now, but like just have those things ready so that when you do get those chances, like you're ready to go, and then you could continue to have more of them. And also, this was a good example of like being in constant communication, or not constant, but being in communication in community with people in your network, so that when you are reaching out to them and talking to them, it doesn't seem like something totally out of left field. Like these are people that are, you know, following your journey, and you're letting them know what's going on.
Yes. Okay. So I didn't realize the chat was happening, so I'm catching up on all the posts. But I see Karen Nicole said, please play it. So because Karen asked, we're gonna play it.
It's booktubers and bookstagrammers.
I can't believe you made me do this.
Technical difficulties.
Hopefully you can see it. I'm like, I know I wrote it too.
Marissa, go home. And you left a mess.
Video is way too long, but it's an example of making an engaging video that, you know, will hopefully get people interested in your work.
It took us so many takes to do that, and Maritza was like, we gotta do it. But we'll speed through these last few slides so that way we can open it up for Q&A.
Yeah, just quickly, do fun things that extend the book. So if you have the time, the bandwidth, and a younger sister you're willing to pay to edit audio interviews for you, then maybe you could use the additional research that you have in your story, for example, to make like a podcast or something else that would be an interesting tool, for example, for libraries or schools. This definitely is something that is doing the most, but we were just so inspired by the Green Book and learned so much that didn't even get into the book, but certainly it influenced and informed our writing, that we wanted to put it somewhere and keep talking about this. So that's what we did here.
Yes, and I will find the link and share it for y'all in the chat. But we created a mini series podcast that has 3 episodes, and it was just our way of including all of the really great research that we found out and we discovered as we went through the writing process. So thank you for your time and your attention. We hope that you enjoyed our presentation as we talked about going from marketplace to manuscript, right? I'm sure I'm saying it in the right order. And just thank you for being here. Also, this picture we love, it happened to be on our first book tour. Somebody did a character. Oh, wait, you don't see it?
You have to go to the.
Oh, wait. Let's see. I don't know what it's showing you, so I'll just stop. But all right.
That was wonderful. Thank you. And thanks for sharing that trailer. I see everyone enjoyed that. Gosh, so first of all, I'll try to go a little chronologically with Q&A, but we can skip around. Several people asked about, the collaborative aspect, if you have a contract between each other, and any recommendations you'd have for co-writers who are siblings or not.
Ooh, contract between each other. I'm like,
I don't know if siblings need a contract more than non-siblings or
right.
Well, luckily we don't beef really in the writing aspect of things. We just have so much to argue about outside of that, that we never get to it. But yeah, we just do it. And I mean, if we do have any types of like artistic differences, we will literally just kind of sit there, state our cases, and then whoever is most passionate, because it'll usually be clear, we'll go with that idea because we know that it'll make the story more effective.
Yeah, and if we ever get to the point where we can't figure it out between us, we have a huge family, so then I'll just go through and tell them the idea and tell them why they should pick mine. So
Be fine.
So you have one contract with the publisher.
Yeah.
The two of you.
Yes.
Yeah, our contract between each other is basically whoever's most passionate about her point. It's been like this, it was an unspoken rule that we just felt like, I don't know if you've heard of, oh my gosh, in the Bible where Solomon has two women and they're like, oh, this is my baby. And they're both going back and forth. And Solomon's like, okay, I am so wise. I will split the baby in two. And then, the mother who wants the baby is like, who's the real mother is like, no, don't split the baby. I'll give it away. And so we figure if we say not to split the baby, then the person's most passionate. That's how we decide.
Okay. And
Johnny's like, oh my gosh, where are we going?
No, that's great. That's great. How do you divide the other tasks for marketing? Do you just tag team all of it?
We tag team a lot, but they're definitely, we play a lot of this by ear. So like there will be one week where like I'm answering all the emails, or Malika will answer all the emails, but then we're like texting to each other like, oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? As we're sending out responses and that sort of thing. And Malika is really good at like making things look pretty for like promo and that sort of thing. So I'll try to get her to do as much of that stuff as possible. The best thing that has happened is Instagram's collaboration feature or something. She'll make something really great and then she could just tag me in it and then it'll show up on my page. That's really great for me.
Yeah, but since Maritza has a journalism background, she has a really great way of knowing how to make stories timely. So when we're pitching to different places, we figure out like, how do we spin it so that way it could be, most timely for this outlet. So I have like the marketing background from before I started publishing professionally, and Maritza has this journalistic background, and the two, when the powers combine, they're really great.
How did you get your agent?
So we were able to get our agent just like by querying traditionally, but the kick in the pants that we needed to like finish Dear Haiti Love Elaine, not that it was called that or anything at the time, but like to actually finish the story and do that is we came across #DVPit online and we pitched for it, even though the story wasn't done yet, which you are not supposed to do, but yeah. We ended up, we got a lot of interest.
All Maritza's idea, by the way.
Anyway, we got a lot of interest from agents and we sat down and just like zoomed through. We ended up going back and doing so many edits and stuff, but yeah, now we are represented by Susie Townsend at New Leaf Literary, and we've been with New Leaf since the beginning.
Yep. I got nothing to add except don't let your sister, I mean, I guess do let your sister pressure you into doing something before it's finished because, we're here now.
You're welcome.
So you got your agent before the first book, Dear Haiti. Yeah. Someone asked, what was your platform like at that time, as in social media following, freelance writing, articles out there?
No, there was no platform. I think too, I
think that's the answer a lot of people want to hear.
There is, I know now, especially with social media, like there's this urge to be like, oh my gosh, I have to have this presence. And I used to work in social media before I started publishing. And one thing I will tell you is that if you don't have any money to get your information in front of people, it's not going to get in front of people. You'll even find that major publishers, they'll have hundreds of thousands of followers and they'll get like 100 likes on their post. So you just starting out, it's okay that you don't have a platform, right? But one thing that's really great is to start curating your page, which Marissa and I have been trying to be more intentional about. So that way, when people read your book and they come to you, they can get a better idea and sense of who you are as an author. But before we had published, we didn't really have a platform. We knew what we had to do, but
So when did you create your website, your co-website?
When did we create that? When did we create that? I don't know. I think I don't remember. I feel like
Love the Lane came out, but like around that publishing time, because we didn't have like an author website or anything beforehand. That was something that we were like, oh, I guess we should do this.
Yeah.
So we
well, you know what? I rescind that a little bit. We had a blog that was now is largely defunct. Okay. But our publisher had, as they were researching us, they came across this blog and it had pictures of me and Maritza and our family and different things. And they thought that was the cutest thing ever. So our agent at the time saw it and she was like, oh, this is great. So she kind of included it as well. But we had like no followers. Like even now there's like, we were kind of just doing it because it was something that we loved. But I think part of it is your publisher wants to know that they can send you to different things and you'll be able to speak and represent yourself and talk about your book in a way that is engaging and get people excited about your work. So
yeah. Mm-hmm. You told us plenty about how the book changed from your initial ideas of it, how it got fleshed out. How much did it change after it was acquired, and what was working with the editor like?
We knew what the ending was going to be like from the get-go. We definitely had to do some more massaging of that idea to get to that place we wanted to go, to make it make sense and like really be like the hit that we wanted it to be in the story. But I feel like that's more just like the writing process and trying to do it. And working with our editor at the time was really great. Natasha Wilson, did a great job of like asking questions if she didn't know something, or asking questions that a reader might have. And then we would have to decide, like, is this a question that we do want to be cleared up now, or something to have them thinking about as they're moving through the story? Yeah.
And we also knew that we wanted the story to end a certain way, and I won't give any spoilers. And that was, I wouldn't say it was a point of tension, but it was definitely something like, oh, well, do we want to make the story the way somebody going into this type of story might think it is? And Maritza and I very early on were like, no, we want it to end this way. And so when you're writing, whether it's option or not, just have convictions about your story and know what you want to stay and what you're okay with changing, and then move through that as you will.
Mm-hmm. We received a lot of questions about marketing. So how did that go? And in terms of the pandemic, first of all, when did you decide to do virtual events only around the release?
Yeah, go ahead, Marcia.
I'm trying to think, but I don't even think we had anything scheduled in person or anything, because like by then, we had been like months into the pandemic. So we weren't part of that first cohort of folks who really had to do so much shuffling, rescheduling to determine what was going to be happening. Like if you're a February, March, April 2020 published author at the time, that's very difficult. So we were a bit removed from that. And I think we were able to benefit some from like, just a little bit of the information that like folks were able to get from earlier things. Yeah, I'm interested to see just in terms of like right now and on, like how like the hybrid model will continue to move forward, because I think it's great to be able to like widen your audience, have people watch. And as it gets safer to be in person and masked up and all that stuff, like it'll be fun and exciting to do. We were able to do our first in-school book event a few weeks ago, which was amazing. But also being able to do online things like this is really fun too. So I think that that's something that we can take from this, that we have options.
Absolutely. Yeah, pros and cons to both for sure. So you mentioned the publicist set up those events, and it seems like you two do some of your own efforts as well. How does that relationship go with the marketing and publicity team?
Yes, so we were really I would say hands-on. And I think part of that is because of my marketing background. So I'm a nerd and I put together this really extensive marketing plan. I was like, all right, 3 months out, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And then of course we wanted to make sure that we weren't overlapping with what our publisher had already had planned. And then whenever we reached out to anybody in our own contacts to see, hey, is there somebody who you think this might be a good fit for, who we could get in front of, we just double checked to make sure that that outlet wasn't already going to be touched by our publisher. And I think, as authors, we think very much about like, I'm an artist, so I'm focusing on the art. But I also think it's important for us to be business minded as well, because truly it is a business. And I don't think that we always think about that portion. And of course, you don't want to you don't want to drown in that and forget the whole purpose is like you need to write a book so that way you can get to the business side of it. But once that business part does start to appear, then be engaged. And it also shows your publisher that this person is on it, so that you will be asking questions, because a lot of times there are authors who maybe don't know the ins and outs of it. So you don't know what you don't know. And you're kind of like, oh, this was great. This is all I got. But Maritza and I, we can ask questions like, oh, can we do this? Can we do that? We already pitched ourselves for here. And I'm sure as a publisher, you're like, oh my gosh, we can't have the author hopefully doing more work than we are.
We have a few more minutes, so audience members, please feel free to add to the Q&A if you'd like. But somebody did ask about market analysis and a proposal or query. What do you think should go into that? And I know that's hard to answer briefly, but
I mean, I was actually talking about this
research.
I was talking about this actually with my professor, because I was trying to think of a research topic, and you never want to chase the headlines, because the headlines are going to change. They're going to evolve. You want to show how your story has staying power. So even if, and I think Maritza and I are able to do this, because one of the good ones, some people might say, oh, it was ripped from the headlines. But one, people have been having these conversations for very long, but also that historical element that we add into the story means that this is not something that is only about the modern day. And I think, when you're querying, the agent isn't really looking at like, the market analysis of it. They want to know the story. Like, can I sell your story? And then afterwards, once you've acquired the agent, you can kind of get into these conversations. But I think before you've gotten the agent, you want to make sure that your query letter is tight. You have information about who you are, what your story is, and then just kind of packaging the story first. And then you can worry about the marketing, because you can't market if you don't have the book.
Mm-hmm. How did the Seth Meyers appearance come about? I guess Seth and I are peers now since I'm talking with you. So that's
yes, you're interviewing us too, Johnny. This counts. Yes.
That's so funny. So like we mentioned, one of our mentors is Brad Meltzer, who went to our high school, and we read a book of his in high school. And when we were publishing Dear Haiti, Love, Elaine, we reached out and we're like, hey, we wrote a book too now. We went to the same high school. Isn't that cool? And like,
we're like, hey, peer.
Yeah, exactly. And we've been like this ever since. So he suggested us for the show, and because the book is so relevant and because we can't stop talking, they were like, oh, we're interested. And we did the pre-interview, and
we didn't think it was going to pan out. We were just like, wow, Brad did this really great thing of at least getting the book in front of them. And he was like, all right, I did that part. And whatever happens next, I have no control.
And I had interned and worked at NBC News for a few years. So like, I think that helped to be like, oh yeah. I mentioned like one time, like seeing Seth Meyers and like running into a wall because I was that starstruck. So like that helped. It was like a cute little story.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Can you hear me? I'm sorry, my AirPods died, so I had to switch.
No, that's okay.
I also wanted to say, we met you through our friends at Las Musas, Myra Cuevas, who did the webinar on finding your agent with us recently.
Yeah.
Las Musas is for women and other marginalized Latinx writers, and it's a collective of authors supporting each other. Do you have any advice for people who want to join that or a group of a similar nature? Like, do you find it pretty valuable to be involved with Las Musas?
Oh yeah, Las Musas has been really awesome. I think, you know, especially for us, like as Haitian Americans from Miami, like Haitian people don't always get, you know, I would say like brought into the Latinx world. So it's been really interesting for us in publishing to see how readily people have kind of pulled us in. And Las Musas in particular has been really great about putting different opportunities. Even this here today is through that. We had another opportunity as well. So if you're able to find uh, different organizations like that, that's great. Now, some of them, we, you know, we can't vouch for all of them. So you want to make sure that you do your research. And then Maritza included the hashtag here, hashtag DVPit. That was when we had already finished writing Dear Haiti. I mean, well, we were almost finished writing Dear Haiti Level 8, and we decided that we wanted to, you know, join it. It's basically this pitch competition where they're looking for diverse voices and they put folks in front of everyone. But funnily enough, Maritza and I did not get an agent from there. We got some good feedback, and then, you know, nobody signed us. And so we took that feedback, and then we're like, all right, we're going to cast more widely now and go with, you know, our dream agents, even though they say you shouldn't have that, but we did. And then we got it. So
Wonderful. Well, it's 2 o'clock, so I'll let you two go. But thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for telling us about the book, about the process. This has been enlightening. And thanks to the audience for joining us. We'll send a follow-up email tomorrow to everyone who registered, and you can please stay in touch with us. You can always email support@authorsguild.org to get in touch.
thank you,
Micah,
everyone.
Maritza, thank you.
Yes. If you had any questions that we didn't get to, please feel free to like tweet us or something. Like I think I saw a few that we didn't get to. So please, we are here to help. So have a great rest of your day.
Everyone.